My mother, 50 years old, was obsessed with buying celebrity-endorsed products from live streams. While I was studying for the civil service exam, she bought a pile of popular brain tonics online and forced me to take them. The result? I suffered from heavy metal poisoning, was rushed to the ICU, and nearly lost my life. My father had a backache, so my mother bought some famous, chi-boosting, plaster online and applied it to him. Within half a day, my father was bedridden. I pleaded with my mother not to buy those dubious products from live streams anymore. She guaranteed the results, then turned around and gave my 3-year-old nephew, Ethan, a cigarette. "This is a health-preserving cigarette I specially bought," she claimed. "It's good for children to smoke." A week later, Ethan was diagnosed with acute lung cancer and passed away on the spot. My father, enraged, demanded a divorce from my mother. My brother, Kevin, also wanted to sever ties with her. Yet she remained delusionally unrepentant, buying a miracle medicine online, claiming it could revive the dead. It was then that I stumbled upon my mother's chat history with someone else. Only then did I realize she had embarked on a path of no return. "Ah, a rat?" I dropped the cup in my hand, and a puddle of green liquid immediately soaked the floor. At my feet lay a dried rat carcass, silently resting in the middle of the liquid. Thinking of what I had just drunk, I clutched my chest and dry heaved. The noise from my room attracted my parents' attention from outside. My mother rushed in. The moment she saw the green puddle on the floor, she looked distraught. "Oh dear, why did you spill it all over the floor? This is good stuff, very expensive." Seeing her heartbroken expression, I instantly knew it was another one of her schemes. A year ago, my mother became addicted to live stream shopping. If a product was endorsed by a celebrity, she would almost always order it. Initially, I didn't pay much attention, but after a while, she started buying bizarre things online, and that's when I realized something was terribly wrong. "Mother, who told you to replace my drinking water with this? This stuff will kill someone." My mother's face darkened, and she said unhappily, "Nonsense. This is a brain tonic I bought online for you. Aren't you studying for the civil service exam? This is exactly what you need. The expert on the live stream said that if you drink this, you'll remember an entire book in 3 seconds. It's very effective." That thing was exposed as a scam ages ago. Besides, look, there's even a dead rat inside. Who knows what kind of viruses it might carry? Thinking of having just consumed that, I felt even more nauseous. My mother, however, paid no mind. She pulled out another small bottle from behind her back, also filled with the blue liquid. I could clearly see a rat's tail floating inside. "What virus are you talking about, you ungrateful child? I'm your mother, would I ever harm you?" I suppressed my nausea, looked at the questionable product in her hand, and patiently explained, "Mother, look closely. It doesn't even have safety standards on it." My mother was about to retort when my father slowly walked in, looked at me, and said, "Just listen to your mother, she only wants what's best for you." With my father's backing, my mother became even more confident. "Exactly, this is such a waste. Hurry up and bend down to drink it all," my mother said, trying to push my head to the floor. Fortunately, at that moment, my father suddenly exclaimed, "Ah, Fiona, my back hurts so much. Could you rub it for me a little?" My father's sudden words came to my rescue. Seeing his grimacing expression, my mother grumbled, "You're always complaining. I think you're just weak. Coincidentally, I bought some chi-boosting plaster online. I'll apply it to you later to see if it helps." With that, my mother told my father to lie face down on the sofa, then went into the room and retrieved a palm-sized jar of plaster. Seeing my mother's attention diverted, I quickly ran to the bathroom and forced myself to vomit. After emptying my stomach, I was still a little worried and intended to go to the hospital for a checkup. But just as I reached the door, I felt a violent cramp in my abdomen, and my whole body involuntarily collapsed. Before I could even cry for help, the sound of me falling against the door caught my mother's attention. "What is this wretched child doing now?" My mother walked over to me. When she saw me on the floor, she quickly helped me up. "Mother, my stomach hurts so much. Please take me to the hospital." I pleaded with her, but she calmly helped me to the sofa. "Why go to the hospital? Your face is so pale, it's just low blood sugar." Coincidentally, I bought a bunch of vitamins. Let me get them for you. Very quickly, my mother returned from her room with a pile of vitamins, most of which didn't even have names. "Here, take 2 pills quickly. This prevents many diseases. You should take a lot of these from now on." Before I could react, she stuffed an unknown pill into my mouth. But before I could swallow, the abdominal pain returned. I instinctively leaned forward, starting to vomit black blood. My father finally realized something was seriously wrong and quickly rushed me to the hospital. After several hours of emergency treatment, I finally passed the critical stage. The doctor told me that I had acute heavy metal poisoning, with levels far exceeding the standard. If I had arrived even a minute later, I might not have survived. Not only that, my kidneys were severely damaged, and other bodily functions were heavily impacted. I couldn't even walk quickly. You never exercise, always cooped up in your room reading books. See? Now something has happened. Beside my hospital bed, my mother lectured me, not showing an ounce of remorse. I looked at her, my heart filled with immense anger. Mother, do you know I'm about to take my exam? Now I can't even pass the health checkup. It's all because you forced me to drink that cursed stuff. I told you it was poisonous. Do you want me to die? For this civil service exam, I had prepared diligently for an entire year. The exam was at the end of the month, and now this happened at such a crucial time. Furthermore, with my current health condition, I feared I would never be able to join a government agency. So, can you blame me? You stayed up late every day and ruined your own body. How is that related to me? Am I wrong for trying to nourish your body? As far as I'm concerned, whether you pass the exam or not doesn't matter. You're grown now, just find someone and get married already. My mother smugly tilted her head, completely indifferent to my pain. She was always like this. As long as she believed she was right, she would never admit fault, even if it led to a dead end. Seeing my poor complexion, my father stepped in to mediate. Bella, your mother also means well for you. You need to understand her. Family members should be a little more generous. You must learn to be forgiving. He tried to lecture me, but halfway through his words, his expression slowly changed. Why is my back so itchy? Fiona, scratch it for me. My father turned his back and lifted his shirt. There, on his waist where my mother had applied the black plaster, the skin had turned a grotesque blue. The flesh on his back looked as if something had gnawed at it, covered in countless tiny holes like grains of rice. And the most horrifying thing was that black, worm-like insects were wriggling endlessly inside those holes. Father, you're back? Seeing my horrified expression, my father looked blankly at my mother. What about my back? My mother was clearly frightened by the sight before her, a flicker of disgust in her eyes, but she still feigned indifference, waving her hand. It's nothing, just some tiny insects, it's normal. Hearing this, my father realized something was wrong. He reached back and scratched his back. The skin that had originally adhered to his waist was now as thin as paper. With a gentle pull, it peeled away, revealing a patch of raw, red flesh. Blood mixed with the blue skin dripped to the floor. What is this? My back, my back? With just a light pull, he could peel off entire sections of skin and flesh from his body. My father was utterly panicked. He turned around and roared at my mother, "You wretched woman, what have you done to me?" My father completely forgot the advice he had just given me. Now it was his turn, and he couldn't be generous at all. Facing my father's accusations, my mother maintained her indifferent expression. It's just a little peeling. They said on the live stream that this is a normal phenomenon, and new skin will grow back after a while. Hearing my mother's words, my father gnashed his teeth in fury. Are you trying to kill me? He was about to raise his hand to slap her when, with a thump behind him, a section of his small intestine fell to the ground through the hole in his waist. This terrified my father to the extreme. He frantically ran into the hallway, calling for a doctor. By the time the nurse arrived, he had collapsed on the floor, completely unable to move. Very quickly, the hospital performed emergency treatment on my father. They discovered that his nerves seemed to be paralyzed by something, to the extent that during surgery, he showed no reaction at all. But when the anesthetic wore off, my father's screams, like a pig being slaughtered, echoed from the operating room. When my father was wheeled out of surgery, he was completely unable to move. Fiona Wang, I will kill you. My father lay face down on the hospital bed, his voice hoarse as he vented his rage. His entire back had completely rotted. According to the doctor, they had removed over 3,000 blood-sucking creatures from just beneath his subcutaneous tissue, and many more remained in his body, which could only be dealt with gradually later. Seeing my father in this state, my mother's face clearly showed a hint of panic, but she still tried to appear calm outwardly. Don't worry, I have a way to help you recover. My mother opened her phone, intending to go to another live stream to buy medicine. My father, horrified, quickly called my brother Kevin, urging him to come quickly. When Kevin arrived at the hospital and saw the horrific state of both my father and me, he was momentarily speechless. Learning that our current conditions were all caused by the dubious products my mother bought online, he couldn't help but scold her fiercely. I told you, Mother, don't buy those cheap, weird things online. You even made my sister drink rat poison and tortured father to this state. Are you even our real mother?" My brother had good reason to scold our mother like that. He himself had previously suffered losses due to similar questionable online products. Yet even now, she hadn't learned her lesson. In fact, she was becoming increasingly frantic, gradually affecting all of us. My mother, scolded by my brother, dared not say anything. After all, the family's finances were in his hands. She could only endure it. Afterward, to make it easier to care for my father and me, my brother called my sister-in-law to have my mother return to his house to help with her grandchildren, and at the same time, he blocked her supplementary credit card, hoping she might calm down a bit until we recovered. We thought that after these two incidents, my mother would learn to restrain herself. Unexpectedly, something happened on her second day at my brother's house. "Hello, son, come home quickly. Ethan is in trouble." Receiving my mother's call, my brother immediately rushed home. According to him, the moment he pushed open the door, a strong smell of cigarette smoke assailed his eyes, making it impossible to open them. He only saw the house filled with thick smoke, as if there was a fire somewhere. "Mother, what are you giving Ethan to smoke?" My brother turned his head and saw his 3-year-old nephew, Ethan, imitating adults, sitting on the sofa, smoking. The ashtray on the table was overflowing with cigarette butts. The way he inhaled and exhaled smoke clearly showed he was a long-time smoker. My mother, meanwhile, sat beside him with a lighter, constantly offering him more cigarettes. "Are you insane, Mother? Ethan is only 3 years old. How could you let him smoke?" My brother snatched the cigarette from his nephew's hand, intending to hit him. Ethan quickly burrowed into my mother's arms. "Mother just wants what's best for him. This child has been frail since he was little. He just fainted from low blood sugar, almost scaring me to death. Luckily, I brought these rejuvenating cigarettes, 2 puffs and he'll be fine." 2 puffs? Are you serious?" My brother pointed at the overflowing ashtray on the table and roared. "I think you're truly old and senile, Mother. If you have nothing better to do, then get out of my house. Stop ruining our family." With that, my brother grabbed Ethan, intending to take him away. My brother's voice was very loud. My mother immediately stood up and shrieked, "What are you shouting about? I'm your mother. I've lived 50 years. What haven't I seen? Would I really harm my own grandson?" The experts online said so. Could they be wrong? Seeing my mother still deluded and unrepentant, my brother slapped her, sending her sprawling to the ground. "Get out of my sight. Go ahead and believe your damn logic, Mother. If anything happens to Ethan, I won't let you off the hook." My brother took Ethan back with him. My sister-in-law's face turned as dark as a pot's bottom when she learned what happened. They rushed our nephew for a full body checkup, but the results devastated everyone. "What, cancer?" My brother's face went dark and he fainted on the spot, looking at the report in front of him. My sister-in-law held our nephew, crying nonstop, her eyes swollen. The cause of the cancer could be environmental factors. Furthermore, the child's lungs have a large accumulation of fluid and traces of smoke inhalation. Does anyone in your family smoke? I suggest aggressive treatment. Otherwise, the child may not live for more than a week. The doctor's words immediately shifted my brother's rage entirely onto my mother. Unfortunately, at this moment, my mother reappeared at the hospital. She carried a thermos of chicken soup, claiming she came to apologize to my father and me. Does she even have the nerve to show her face here? She's the one who killed someone. My father, lying on the bed, angrily punched the mattress. Seeing his demeanor, my mother was displeased. "What do you mean by that?" Your old mother came to apologize to you, and you're getting all high and mighty." However, before my father could retort, my brother appeared at the door of the hospital room. My mother turned her head, and before she could say anything, my brother hurled the medical report directly at her face. "You old hag, get out of my sight. You even want to harm your own grandson. Are you even human? If you weren't my mother, I genuinely want to kill you right now." My mother, startled by my brother's attitude, quickly hid behind my bed. "Did you eat gunpowder? I'm your mother. Even if you were my ancestor today, I'd still have to teach you a lesson you'll never forget." My brother was clearly enraged. He pulled out his belt and whipped her relentlessly. My sister-in-law stood by the door, watching, with no intention of stopping him. My brother chased my mother around the hospital room, lashing her for half an hour. Only when she finally understood why she was being beaten did my mother cover her face, her expression wronged. "No way. I followed his instructions exactly. He guaranteed me that it was impossible to get cancer. Even your father and sister just need to rest for a while and they'll be fine." Hearing my mother's words, it seemed as if her actions were being directed by someone else. Before I could ask more, a nurse ran from the hallway. "Who is Ethan's family? The child is having a seizure. We need a family member to sign." Ethan was my nephew's name. Hearing that her grandson was in trouble again, my brother put his belt away and hurried over. After all, he was her biological grandson. My mother saw this and followed. However, at that very moment, her phone accidentally slipped to the floor. Before I could say anything, I saw a message pop up on her phone screen. "Next mission, kill your grandson." I opened the phone and scrolled through my mother's chat history. Immediately, I understood why she had harmed me. As my fingers scrolled up and down, the blue conversation bubbles on my mother's phone filled my heart with a chilling sensation. It turned out that the things she made me drink and the plaster she applied to my father had all been planned in advance. Even giving Ethan cigarettes was a command from the other party. My mother merely followed orders. And the reason my mother slavishly obeyed him was because she was his devout follower. That person was an online spiritual master. I clicked on his profile information. The other party was very careful, leaving no useful details. And when the latest message appeared, an ominous feeling suddenly rose in my heart. Could my mother really kill her own grandson? Recalling what she had done to my father and me, this wasn't impossible. My first reaction was to call the police. At the same time, I secretly installed a screen sharing function on my mother's phone, starting to collect evidence. Then I tucked her phone under the bed, pretending it had fallen. Not long after I finished these tasks, my mother rushed back into the hospital room from outside. "Have any of you seen my phone? Bella, where's my phone?" She looked panicked, as if there was something very important on the phone. I pretended to still be angry, ignoring her. She asked my father. My father immediately started cursing. Left with no choice, my mother had to search the hospital room. Fortunately, I had placed it in a rather obvious spot, and she found it without much effort. I noticed that when she held the phone, her tense expression clearly relaxed. But when she saw the message on the phone, she visibly hesitated for a moment. Then, she typed a line, "If I do this, can I truly change my fate?" The other party replied with an affirmative emoji. My mother thought for 2 seconds, then put her phone away. Seeing this, my heart sank. My mother didn't stay in the hospital room for long. As she was about to leave, I called out to her, "Mother, don't forget Ethan is your grandson." My sudden words made my mother freeze. She gave a forced smile. "I know, I'm just going to check on him." With that, my mother walked out of the hospital room. However, an hour later, I heard my brother's desperate screams from outside the hospital room. At the same time, both my screen-sharing phone and my mother's received a message notification. "Mission accomplished." Seeing those words, I was so furious I trembled all over. As I struggled to support myself and pushed my father's wheelchair outside the operating room, my brother was blocking the emergency doctor at the door. "Tell me why. Didn't you say he could live for another week? How could my son die in less than an hour?" The doctor tried to explain. "Theoretically, yes, but the child's recent reaction was clearly stimulated by the same substance. You could understand it as the child dying from smoking, not because our emergency treatment was too late." Inside the operating room, my sister-in-law was holding Ethan's body, crying nonstop. My mother stood beside her, looking calm, muttering, it's okay. Mother is taking on this misfortune for you all. He has great fortune and a long life. He will come back to life." Hearing my mother muttering such deranged words beside him, my brother's rage flared even more. "It's all this old woman's fault. She insisted on listening to those bogus online experts and bought all that nonsense for my son to smoke. She killed him. Give me back my son," my brother said, then started punching and kicking my mother again. My mother, being hit, covered her head and ran, crying, "Stop hitting me, stop. If you kill me, Ethan truly won't be saved." Hearing my mother's words, my brother somewhat restrained his anger and stopped. "What do you mean by that?" "I know a master online. He has a kind of medicine. For only 30,000 yuan, he can bring the dead back to life." My mother's words, even knowing the things she had done behind our backs, felt incredibly absurd. "Mother, have you gone mad from being online too much?" my brother cursed. "If he had such power, why would he be an online master?" Seeing my brother about to strike again, my mother immediately grabbed his leg, crying and pleading. "I'm telling the truth. How could I harm my own grandson? The master said it. This is a trial he has to go through. As long as he overcomes it, our family will become incredibly rich and prosperous." To make my brother believe her, my mother continued, "That person is very powerful. Have you forgotten? Before, I had stomach cancer and even the doctors couldn't save me. it was he who cured me. Hearing my mother's words, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. Mother, have you forgot? Yours wasn't stomach cancer, it was just regular appendicitis. I was the one who paid for your surgery to cure it. How could that be? I had cancer back then, my mother swore in response. Seeing her resolute expression, I knew she had been thoroughly brainwashed. Seeing this, I didn't bother to explain further. I directly pulled out her old medical report from that time. Mother, see for yourself, nothing surprising. My mother smacked my phone away and cursed at me. Don't you dare try to deceive me. I'm doing all of this so the entire Zio family can soar. Have I, Fiona Wang, ever done anything for myself? 50 years. Do you think I've done anything for myself? Seeing my mother pull her familiar hypocritical act, I stopped pretending. I took out my phone and publicly displayed her chat history with that master. Inside, it meticulously recorded every word and action between my mother and the master. The master had declared that a malevolent spirit was active in our house, so my mother intended to pay him to resolve it. Unexpectedly, the other party generously refused, saying he could help for free. She just needed to use his products and follow his instructions. He said that to avert disaster, one must first encounter it before it strikes. So my mother, despite knowing those products were greatly harmful to people, decided to make us use them. Then, to continue selling his products, the other party claimed that the only one who could save our family was my nephew, because he was a child of fate sent to help us. If he died, our family would soar, becoming rich and prosperous. Thus, my mother became immersed in the fabricated picture the other party painted. She began finding every way to harm our entire family, then sweetly calling it for our own good. This was also why she continuously and frantically bought celebrity-endorsed products. Those were all death charms used to take the lives of our entire family. Of course, all of this was just the surface. The most important thing was her chat history with another person. Inside, there was just one simple sentence. I'm about to get rich. I told you I would definitely change my life. The other party completely ignored her. While she claimed it was for us, ultimately, my mother was entirely driven by self-interest. Mother, do you think you're helping our family change its fate? You're harming people, Mother. As the last sentence finished, my mother trembled all over, as if she had sobered up a little. My father and brother, after reading the entire chat history, also looked incredibly angry. This ridiculous reason made them both feel utterly disbelief. Fiona Wang, you are truly something else. Do you even know what you're doing? My brother was so enraged he wanted to kill my mother to avenge his nephew. If the police hadn't arrived in time, my brother might have actually acted on it. At the police station, my mother numbly recounted the entire case to the police. Very quickly, she was detained for intentional homicide. At the same time, the police assured us they would apprehend the mastermind behind my mother, that so-called master. At my nephew's funeral, I pushed my father's wheelchair into the cemetery. My brother and sister-in-law held our nephew's urn with lingering affection, saying their final goodbyes. However, just as the burial was about to take place, my mother appeared at the cemetery. Mother, why are you here? Aren't you at the police station? Looking at the 4 or 5 tall, muscular men standing behind her, holding shovels, it was clear they were not there with good intentions. I sensed the danger, shielding my father behind me. My sister-in-law also covered our nephew's tombstone, hiding behind my brother. How did you get out? My brother was also very surprised by my mother's appearance. He just saw her face numb, muttering, Ethan isn't dead. I have a way to bring him back to life. Give me his urn. Before my mother finished speaking, the 4 or 5 men surrounded my brother, preparing to dig up my nephew's grave. Seeing my mother acting as if she were possessed, my brother cautiously pushed my sister-in-law away. Don't come any closer, I'll call the police. But the opponents were numerous and held weapons, completely unafraid. 2 men restrained my brother to the ground, while the other 3 began digging. Seeing this, my sister-in-law tried to rush forward to stop them, but was struck down by a shovel, falling to the ground, which immediately became stained with blood. I screamed in fear, but the opponents not only didn't stop but dug faster. They unearthed my nephew's grave, smashed the tombstone, and handed the urn to my mother. My brother gnashed his teeth in fury, struggling to resist, wanting to fight my mother to the death, but he was held firmly to the ground by 2 strong men, unable to move. That's your own grandson's grave. You brought people to dig it up like this. Are you still human? But my mother's expression was very calm. She quietly looked at my brother. Very soon, you'll all know that I'm the one who's right. My mother led the men away, leaving only chaos in the cemetery. My brother cried, holding my sister-in-law, trying to rouse her. I looked at the blood staining the ground and quickly called an ambulance. My father, in his wheelchair, looked up at the sky, his face helpless. Oh God, what karma did my Zio family accumulate to marry such a disaster? Remembering the recent events, my father trembled with rage, his chi and blood surged, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. My brother and I quickly rushed my sister-in-law and father back to the hospital. Fortunately, my father had only fainted from overwhelming grief and anger, and my sister-in-law only had superficial injuries to her forehead. Afterwards, at the police station, we learned that my mother had been bailated out by someone who paid a large sum of money. The person who posted her bail was a man named Mr. Ray. When the police showed us his picture, my father immediately reacted. Oh, so it was him. According to my father, this man was my mother's business partner 20 years ago. They were very close due to work. My parents argued countless times because of this. As for whether there was anything between my mother and him, my father couldn't say for sure. But it was certain that he had feelings for my mother. This bail incident somewhat confirmed it. At the same time, we also found out that over the past year, Mr. Ray and your mother had maintained contact. Furthermore, they seem to have joined a heavenly energy cult. That organization was a multi-level marketing scheme, and Mr. Ray was one of its key members. We have been tracking him for 2 years. Therefore, we now have reason to suspect that your mother may very well have been brainwashed by this MLM cult. I didn't refute the police's words. Just from the fact that she could harm my father and me, it was clear my mother was inherently selfish. But I still had one question. My mother seemed to genuinely care about my nephew's life and death, adamantly believing he would be revived. Any normal person would know this was impossible. Yet, my mother deeply trusted it, even going so far as to dig up his grave and snatch his urn. Did she truly love my nephew, or did she have another motive? Just as I was completely bewildered, a message from my mother suddenly appeared on my phone. Bella, I'm about to perform a ritual for your younger brother. I'm going to bring him back to life. I stared blankly at the message my mother sent. My father, upon hearing the news, erupted like fireworks, immediately cursing loudly. That promiscuous woman, that wicked bitch, his whole life he was just a rotten. I had never seen my father so furiously angry. I was momentarily stunned. From his violent reaction, I realized something was amiss, so I cautiously asked, Father, what's wrong? Don't call me father, I'm not your father. I frowned, looking at my brother. He seemed to know something, bowing his head in silence beside me. I felt increasingly strange. From my mother's message, a terrifying thought suddenly flashed in my mind. Before this thought could be confirmed, I quickly received a video. In the video, inside a small, dark room, a group of people sat huddled together, mumbling something. And on the altar in front of them was my nephew's urn. The sight sent chills down my spine. I quickly threw my phone away, not daring to look anymore. But for the police, this video was very important. The police were already searching for their traces through the room's arrangement and various objects. They quickly determined the approximate location of this room, then gathered forces, preparing to apprehend the culprits. But strangely, my brother, who had previously harbored extreme hatred for my nephew's death, seemed to have transformed into a different person. He stammered, saying he wanted to stay at the hospital to care for my father and sister-in-law. If it were before, I definitely wouldn't have thought much of it. But now, his actions made me increasingly suspicious. Just before the day I was to act with the police, I received another message from my mother. Don't let your so-called brother lead your father to escape. The messages my mother sent me were getting stranger and stranger. She seemed to know we were about to go looking for them. But not only was she unafraid, she continuously reminded me of what to pay attention to. I grew increasingly confused and messaged my mother back. What do you mean, mother? My mother no longer replied with text, but sent me a picture. It was a gigantic insurance compensation document. I remembered that a long time ago, because my nephew's health wasn't good, my father and brother, worried about him, had bought him this insurance policy. And one of the primary beneficiaries was my father's name. Before I could react, my mother sent a sentence completely unrelated to the picture. He's not his biological son. My mother's words immediately cemented my previous suspicions. My mind became increasingly chaotic. I didn't know how to respond. Just as I was distracted, I suddenly received a call from the hospital. Hello, are you family of patient Kevin Zio? Please come settle the outstanding hospital fees. Hearing the voice on the other end, my mind immediately went blank. When I arrived at the hospital, I found my sister-in-law alone on the hospital bed, uncared for, while my brother and father had long disappeared. Why did they flee? I truly couldn't understand. It seemed everything had completely spiraled out of my control. Countless questions intertwined like tangled, thorny vines. Just then, I noticed on the phone's shared screen that my mother had sent a message to the spiritual master she had previously contacted. Things seem to be going wrong, we need to run. Following that, my mother sent a picture, but the people in the photo were my father, who was supposedly paralyzed, and my brother. I was stunned. In the photo, my father was healthy and energetic, no longer appearing bedridden as before. My brother also looked rosy and healthy, completely unlike a father who had just lost his child. Looking at that photo, I suddenly realized that the person who had been using this account to send messages to the other party didn't seem to be my mother. It could very well be my father or my brother. I remembered my mother's advice. I told my sister-in-law to rest well and immediately rushed home. Upon arriving, I found the house ransacked. Except for my and my mother's clothes and belongings, all traces related to my father had been completely erased. My brother's house was even worse. When I got there, the management said they had already listed the house for sale online, and no one in our family knew about it. I stood in front of my brother's house like a clueless fool. I suddenly felt ridiculous, a deep sense of powerlessness enveloping me. The police acted swiftly. My mother, Mr. Ray, and the crowd gathered for the ritual were quickly arrested. As a family member, the police had the right to inform me that my mother had been apprehended. When I saw my mother again at the police station, she looked very relaxed. You couldn't stop them. My mother clearly knew I couldn't stop my father, but she didn't care. They'll die abroad anyway, and living here would just be a prolonged misery. I didn't understand my mother's meaning. I poured out all my questions in a torrent. My mother just looked at me and smiled. Not until I had finished speaking did my mother reply with an unrelated sentence. Don't call him father anymore. Mr. Sean, that beast, is not your father, and he doesn't deserve to be. My mother didn't say another word to me after that. But later, the police told me that when my mother and Mr. Ray were tried, they were acquitted. As for Mr. Sean and my brother, Kevin, who were abroad, they were listed by the state as first-degree fraud criminals, and the opposing country was requested to cooperate in an international pursuit. The first thing my mother did after being released from prison was to find my sister-in-law and me, then take us to a place. It was a small villa on the mountainside. As soon as we arrived, a housekeeper came out carrying a 3- or 4-year-old boy. The child looked exactly like my nephew. The moment he saw my sister-in-law, he chirped, "Mommy." Only then did I learn the whole truth of the matter. All the theatrics my mother put on later were entirely to deal with my father and brother. If she hadn't done that, I probably would have been implicated as well. You are my daughter. I couldn't let you be in danger. Those two are devious. They copied a foreign gang, lost $80 million in gambling, and couldn't pay it back, so people were coming for their lives. Mr. Sean was originally infertile. Kevin was adopted by him. My son, though, is my biological child, but not his. They are the true father and son. A few years ago, Kevin went out to a flower market and damaged his kidneys, becoming just like Mr. Sean from then on. Coincidentally, at that time, your Uncle Ray and I had a child, and he cried and insisted on adopting him. But in reality, both of them had malicious intentions. They bought a massive insurance policy for the baby, then secretly gave him chronic poison, taking money from both Uncle Ray and me. The child's death would also earn them insurance money. It's truly disgusting. If I hadn't found out early, the baby might have truly become their debt-paying tool. Seeing they couldn't pay their debts, the two of them came up with a plan to exploit me to extort more money from your Uncle Ray. The rat poison you drank, and Mr. Sean being bedridden with a rotting back were all staged by them. They knew I loved to shop, so they used that to their advantage, buying many things online under my name and then blaming everything on me. For money, these two gamblers would stop at nothing. If it wasn't for your Uncle Ray saving me later, I would have almost been conned. Initially, we planned to set a trap for them to fall into, but they were too cunning to catch. We thought we could rely on you, but you were too naive. My mother gave a helpless laugh, clearly not blaming me. Listening to my mother's story, I seemed to understand several things. No wonder when I told my mother that my nephew was her grandson, her expression was a little strange. I am your biological mother, but your father is not your father. You might think I had an affair, but you could also understand it as a young woman in the 70s being raped and forced to marry her rapist. Do you think anyone would like a man who doesn't care about his family and is a gambling addict? Mr. Sean turned a blind eye for money. Your Uncle Ray gave him a considerable amount of money every year. If this relationship hadn't been so shady, I wouldn't have nearly been exploited by him. Hearing these words, my worldview shattered a little. So, Ethan is my younger brother and this child is Ethan, but then who was the child who died in the hospital? He was another unfortunate child. We gave his family a sum of money. He had cancer and couldn't be saved anyway. At that time, I went to the operating room precisely to swap him with Ethan. Luckily, Kevin and Mr. Sean were only thinking about money, so they didn't notice the swap. But it also required your sister-in-law's help. Otherwise, it truly might not have escaped their notice. Hearing this, I finally reacted. No wonder when Ethan was born, my sister-in-law immediately held him so tightly. At this point, almost everything was clear. I was so surprised that the father and brother I had lived with for decades were such people. Except for me, it seemed everyone in the family had their own hidden motives. Thinking it over, I couldn't help but feel a little horrified. My mother told me, you can know a person's face, but not their heart. Even with your closest relatives, you must be cautious. Later, my mother forcibly filed for divorce from Mr. Sean and remarried Uncle Ray. The two finally got to be together as they wished. Because I didn't stop Mr. Sean and Kevin from fleeing in time, the difficulty of the transnational pursuit increased exponentially. But fortunately, they were caught before they could enjoy 3 months of freedom. Moreover, they voluntarily returned to the country to surrender. The reason, when stated, was truly laughable. After going abroad, because their debts were not fully paid, their friends angrily sold them to a black market factory where they toiled for 3 months. After that, they truly couldn't bear it anymore, so they found an opportunity to escape and immediately returned to the country, saying that sitting in prison was better than going abroad again.